Nope.
Down to Dort. This is Lee Dort, and I'm down to dunk. This is Lee Dort, and I'm down to Dort.
I'm Josh Giddey, and I'm down to dunk.
Hey, this is Kenny Hustle, and I'm down to dunk.
I'm Darius Baisley, and I'm down to dunk.
I'm Mike Muscala, and I'm down to dunk.
This is Poku, and I'm down to dunk.
I love cereal. Captain Crunch, Cinnamon Toast Crunch, Cracklin Oat Bran.
Oh, I can have these. I'm going to share with my team, but I'm going to hog most of them.
Welcome to Down to Dunk. I'm your host, Andrew Schleck. We're part of the Athletic Podcast Network. With me, as always, on Wednesdays is my good friend, Alex Spears. Alex, what's up?
What's up, Andrew? Are you enjoying the playoffs, Andrew?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah. We get a juicy Celtics-Nets game tonight that I am quite excited about. You can listen to me recap it on the Daily Ding tonight with Law Marie.
Oh, nice. Yeah, last night was fun. That Suns game kind of came out of nowhere. That was pretty interesting. I'm trying to start exercising again.
Oh, nice.
And so I've been biking, and I'll bike for like a quarter just to get started. You know, it's usually about 30 minutes. I started biking at the beginning of the Grizzlies Timberwolves game.
Yeah.
And they just kept calling fouls. And I was like, I can't get to the end of this quarter if you guys keep calling all these fouls. But I came up with a solution. I want to see what you think about it.
Okay.
Because really, for me, the thing that bothers me, the foul calls are annoying enough, but it's really when they go to the monitor, like every 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay. So what do you think about this? They can still go to the monitor as often as they want.
Mm-hmm.
As many times. Go as many times you want. But every time you go to the monitor, the picture quality on the monitor gets worse. So if you're a ref and you want to make sure you get it right at the end of the game so that no one's talking about you, you better save it up, because if you use them like they did in that game, by the end of the game, it's going to just look like snow. You're going to be able to barely make out what's going on the screen, and that'll be their fault.
What I never understood is, like, if you have people in a separate location that you're talking to, why
can't they just look at it and make a decision real quick?
Yeah, why can't they just be in the ear of the official and be like, hey, this is what happened. This is the call. Move on.
I don't know. It sucks, though. Like, the start of that game was miserable.
Yeah.
It was 1-1 for like 2 minutes. And it was probably like 10 minutes of real time. It was just so annoying. And the fact that they're like checking every little thing, like the fact that they checked the Steven Adams slap, like,
oh my gosh,
who cares?
That's the kind of stuff that is not great about the NBA. But however, we've got great stars in this league, and the Grizzlies. Yeah, I wish that game was better, but like just seeing what Ja was able to do last night, and like other rising stars like Brandon Ingram with the Pelicans.
Oh my gosh, he was incredible.
It's just really fun to see these young guys rise up, because we're in a section of the NBA timeline where we're hitting the end of the LeBron Steph Curry run, and someone else is going to have to step up and take the league. Because like right now, it's a lot of team-oriented basketball. I mean, like Giannis is definitely someone who's like a candidate to take the league. Jokic is, but like until Giannis and the Bucks are just like absolutely dominant, I don't know how many people are picking the Bucks to win the championship. You know, like we're just we're in a really sweet spot where there's young guys rising up. There's a lot of teams that could win it this year. And I think the hope for the NBA is that this is just kind of what the NBA is. However, there's always a team or a player or somebody that rises up and it's like, oh my gosh, how are you ever going to beat them? You know, that always happens.
Well, as an example of that, just as an illustration of how good the league is right now. I was talking to a listener, Dennis Todman, on Twitter. He was the one that we had been talking about, the ESPN 25 under 25.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I wonder what this looked like a few years ago. So I went back to the 2017. I just want to read you the top 25.
Mm-hmm.
So Anthony Davis, number 1. Pretty good so far. Giannis, number 2. Karl Anthony Towns, Joel Embiid. That was a top 4. That's all great. Kristaps Porzingis at 5 over Jokic. But, you know, this was back in 2017. Porzingis is still a good player. Rudy Gobert, Kyrie Irving, Andre Drummond was number 9.
Wow.
Was at that time thought of as the 9th best player who was under 25. Andre Drummond.
Interesting.
Number 10, Ben Simmons. 11, Andrew Wiggins, Jabari Parker, Miles Turner, Bradley Beal, D'Angelo Russell, Steven Adams was 16th on the 25 under 25. Now that was coming off of the 2016 playoffs when he legitimately had a great playoffs and looked like
awesome. He was
center, like the center of the future for the NBA.
Yeah.
Not like he was going to be, you know, Karl Anthony Towns or something like that, but just like, here's a guy who can play in the modern NBA. Like, that's how we felt coming out of that 2016.
Good passer, can score a little bit more than you think. There's always the rumblings of he's going to shoot threes. Steven Adams is
right.
threes, you know.
Still, the fact that he was on this list. Number 17, Devin Booker. Steven Adams was ranked ahead of him.
Wow.
Okay. Aaron Gordon, Zach LaVine, Victor Oladipo, Brandon Ingram, Rodney Hood, Otto Porter, Thon McCurr.
Oh my gosh.
Was 24th, Julius Randle 25. Now, there's still a lot of good individual names on that, but you compare that, by the way, so this was Amin Elhassan, Kevin Pelton, and David Thorpe. They're looking at their 25th ranked players is always really funny because that's when you're like really wondering what you're doing.
Yeah.
Amin had Bismack Biyombo. Kevin Pelton had Tobias Harris. Okay, that's kind of justifiable. David Thorpe had Elfrid Payton. The point is, like, if you look, even going back to the mind of 2017, how we thought about those players, compare that to this year's list. And it's kind of hard to do because obviously you're going to be higher on the guys now because of recency bias.
Yeah.
But I just feel like the talent from 1 to 25 on that most recent list is so far beyond like even 5 years ago. Obviously there were great guys on that list then, but like the list this year is just stacked. And even like remove John Collins, put somebody else on there. Like I think John Collins is good. You can even remove Bane. Like I think there are other players that you could consider because
Jalen Green wasn't on the list.
I don't think Franz Wagner was on the list.
Yeah, Josh wasn't on the list. Like those 3, those 3 should be on the list. Like let's be clear.
It is stacked right now with young talent, and it's only getting better. Like what podcast was I listening to just yesterday? I don't even know. They were talking about how much more skill is coming into the league. What podcast was I listening to? I listened to freaking Sam Presti's press conference. That's what podcast I was listening to. Sam Presti said it.
We were listening to that 3-hour show.
Yeah. I was like, who was that guy? He was talking about the draft. I don't think I'd listened to a draft pod yesterday. Who was that?
Me sitting there waiting to get the audio on pins and needles, trying to get the audio from that thing.
Well, that's a great segue. I just had a few thoughts on Sam Presti's podcast, which I did listen to all of.
Good for you.
Thank
I can actually tell you what percentage of people listen to the whole thing.
Really?
It's kind of fun.
Yeah,
it can't be very many because
look it up while I'm talking.
Okay.
I mean, by the last 30 minutes, I cranked it up to 2 times speed. When he got to recommending books, that's when I was hitting the skip forward.
Yeah, that was it was very much needed for me personally because I had to pee so bad. And then, however, like Barry asked him another question, I got another great answer after that too. So
yeah, he did. Yeah. Okay, so first thing, I think in terms of best quote to come out of it, I really liked the quote of trying to fix things quickly takes a very long time.
Yeah.
That's a very short and easy, succinct way to explain something that we've been talking about for like 2 seasons now.
Yeah, it's a great way to explain this why the Sacramento Kings are the Sacramento Kings.
It is. And in fact, I would love, we need to talk to, because, I was kind of, I wanted to be positive about the Sabonis trade
Yeah.
at the time.
Yeah.
And I know there are people who are still positive, but looking at like the criticisms of the Kings, like there was a great Sac B article that came out a few weeks ago kind of talking about like what the actual problem with the Kings is that they never just let something marinate. And when they do let something marinate, it's always the wrong thing. It's like, we're going to let Vlade stay for a really long time. Meanwhile, we're changing coaches every single year.
Right.
And I guess the thing I wonder is like, it's becoming harder for me to not view that Halliburton for Sabonis trade in that same frame, because it's like they only gave De'Aaron Fox and Halliburton. They got this amazing gift of Halliburton dropping in that draft, and they only gave that pairing a year and a half, and even less than that when you factor in injuries.
Yeah.
And then immediately made a move. And even if I want
in that draft, I mean,
right.
Yeah.
And so as I've been just thinking about that trade more, it's like I want to believe in the Kings just because I like their fan base. But I'm starting to look at that trade more as like, how is this not just another example of everything the Kings have done? Like, because they don't get the benefit of the doubt. And so like, it's hard not to. Anyways, I really liked that quote, whether it's true or not. I mean, I'm sure there are, I think the difference is like a team like the Raptors obviously tried to fix things quickly by trading for Kawhi, but that's more of like a final piece. Same thing with like the Suns. Like a lot of the examples you could think of where a team did fix things quickly, made a huge jump, is about them adding a final piece, or a team that can attract like massive free agents in one summer.
Yeah.
So I like that. So I think the biggest quote or like the biggest statement that got people talking was when he said, if the Thunder gets to the point next season where they're not playing games of consequence, they're going to shift to development again.
Yeah.
Which again is one of those quotes where you can kind of make it whatever you want it to be. And my response to that was like, I wish there had been two follow-up questions. The first is, what is a game of consequence? Because like, if this team is 2 games out of the 10th seed in February, are those games of consequence? Because I think for a lot of the fan base, they would be.
No.
But I have a feeling they're not.
I can answer that question for you. No.
And so what is it? Like, what is the bar? Which I don't even know if he would admit or if he would actually
I'm going to tell you
what
I
it
don't
is.
think he would tell us what the bar is, but I think the bar is like you're in the playoffs. Like you're the 6th seed. You're the 5 seed.
It would be hard though. Like if they're in the 8th seed and it's this year where they have like a 2-game lead on the 9th seed or something like that, it's going to be hard for them not to keep going if we're in like February with that.
Yeah, we'll see.
So basically, I'm just trying to figure out like what is the
far
line.
away the other teams are too. Like how far
Right.
the teams behind you are.
Yeah, how far you could drop.
Yeah, I mean if you're 10 games up on the 11th seed, then yeah, you're not. You can't pull the ripcord because you'll just fall to 9 or 10.
Yeah.
But if you're a game and a half away from 11 or 12, then it's like, all right, let's go. Are these really the games you want? Because if the result is the Thunder wind up at 9 and they lose in the play-in, and you're just like, crap, like we just got a really terrible lottery pick to play one game that we lost.
Right.
Like you have to, and you have to see like how competitive are we versus the other teams that are in the play-in range.
And why I think it's good, like differentiating or defining what a game of consequence is because I think that means a lot of different things to a lot of different Thunder fans.
Absolutely, it will. I think that there will be people that would be mad if they are near the play-in range and they pull the ripcord or shot pull levers, and it's like, wait a minute, like what are we doing? And the answer is like, what are we doing? Is we're trying to actually make the franchise really good for the future, understanding that this current team has a ceiling, and it will depend so much on what they get with their own pick and what they get with the Clippers pick in this upcoming draft. So it's really hard to even answer the questions right now. Like if they were to get Chet and then somebody else really good at 12, then it's and those guys along with Shea and Giddey are pulling your team up.
Yeah.
Then you're like, you know what? That's where you're like, okay, let it ride. If it's Mike Muscala hitting like 5 buzzer beaters and you're in, I think you have to like evaluate, okay, like what are we? So I think it's also like circumstantial where it's like Chet Holmgren's averaging 17, 7, and 3, and he's the like front runner for rookie of the year, and the Thunder are like the Cavs of this past season, then it's like a no-brainer. Like, let's go. But if it's Keegan Murray averaging 12 points, you know, you're just like, I don't know. I think that the ceilings are obviously very different with those two. And I think not only do you have to evaluate it based on where they are in the standings, but like, what do you actually think of the team?
Mm-hmm.
Who is pulling the team up? Is it the young guys? Well, then we don't have a choice. We have to go for it. If it's your role players, it's like, okay, it's time to sit down again, you know.
And then the other part of that statement was, if they're not playing games of consequences, they're going to shift to development again. And I think most people read that as the shift to development this year was those last 5 games, which, like, I just don't think that was development. Like playing Yorgos Kaltzakis 45 minutes per game until he hobbles off the court, like that didn't feel like development to me. And so I would have liked to known what that actually like is that coded language, like we'll shift to tanking, or is he talking about like a month prior when we started shifting to playing Poku more, Teo more, Roby more? Because that did feel like a shift to development whenever that happened, like in March or February. But like what they did at the end of the year, like we can be honest about it. Like that wasn't a shift to development. Most of those guys are never going to be on a court again. Even if you wanted to develop someone like Yorgos, throwing him out there for 45 minutes with a bunch of other guys who are playing in the NBA for the first time, like, is that really the best developmental environment for Yorgos? I don't know.
Yeah, he said he wished that he would have brought those guys in earlier,
which would have been great.
Yeah,
just to get a few extra minutes. And it would have been great for those guys because they would have gotten to play with actual rotation players in the NBA. I mean, the best player those guys were playing with most of the time was Isaiah Roby.
Yeah. Here's the thing. Like, even if you're playing Poku and Maladone and Trey or whoever else, there's not a whole lot of development going on in the last 2 weeks of the NBA anyways.
There's not, but like for someone like Poku, I actually feel like that is a good opportunity because we so rarely, when everyone's healthy, get to see him in that point Poku role, which, you know, the chances of that working out are going to be like under 2%.
Yeah, I know. That's part of what I'm saying is like that, like those moments are not going to make or break a career for somebody. In fact, it's like those are actually like the moments with like these small market, like tanking teams where you start to gain hope in things that aren't real.
But to be honest, like that's the only thing we have to base our, like, most of our Poku conversation is about how he's played in the second half of the season, mostly in games that have not mattered.
Yeah, but I mean, a game in like February or like even mid-March like means a lot more than the games in, you know, early April. They just do. Like the end of the season, like everybody's pulling ripcords. It's not just the Thunder. You know,
but dude, like what they did is far beyond what any other team did in the league.
I know, and I'm really proud of them.
And by the way, I'm not saying this as like I'm mad that they did it.
Yeah, I think it's the exact right thing. I think that because if they won, I mean, there's a chance they could have won both games in LA with the teams that the Lakers and the Clippers put out there. They could have won both of those games, and that would have been detrimental to the franchise.
Absolutely. It's more about, let's just call it like it is. Like I actually liked his analogy of comparing it to September call-ups. Like just say, like, at the end of the season, we like to get a longer look at our G League guys. We're going to shift towards that. This whole idea that like we're shifting to development, we want to get a longer look.
Yeah.
I don't know.
You can. I mean, he's just. I mean, the thing is, like, Sam's not going to come out and say, "Hey, we tanked the last few games because we want a better draft pick." But
Right.
but we also all know that they tanked the last few games to get a better draft pick. Like, you don't need to hear him say it to know what they did.
I agree. But I just want fans to acknowledge what we did. That's all.
It was great. It was one of my more proud moments as a Thunder observer.
I liked that he talked about the value of continuity as a competitive advantage, and I think that was a good reframing of an issue that we've brought up a lot, which is like, oh, there's this trend of international players staying at the place they drafted longer than American-born players. It seems like he's targeting international players. Maybe that's the reason. We've always been framing it as like this. You're trying to avoid this negative. You're trying to avoid another situation where Kevin Durant just leaves you right at his peak. But he kind of reframed it as a positive. Like, no, it's more about let's build a team that can stick together, because in a league where players are changing teams every single year, that type of competitive advantage or that type of whatever you would call that, the type of quality of a team is a competitive advantage, as we're seeing with like the Golden State Warriors. The fact that there are like I forget what the stat is. It's like 5 or 6 guys who have been with their team longer than 10 years, and 3 of them are on the Warriors. Like, that really matters at some point. And we've just been waiting for those guys to get healthy. We'll see how it works out the rest of this playoffs. But I liked that, just the reframing of that as a competitive advantage. When discussing luck, I thought it was very interesting that Presti's first example was Memphis, jumping up to 2 to get Ja Morant.
Yeah.
And I think that was I'm guessing that was deliberate, that he chose Memphis as his example for a specific reason. I think that reason is Memphis is young. Why can't we be good like Memphis? Like, I think Memphis is going to be the comparison point for OKC over these next couple of years, because if you go look at the youngest rosters in the league, Memphis is right there. They're winning 50 plus games a year. They're in the playoffs as the 2 seed. Like, I think it's reasonable for OKC fans to look at that. And also because OKC fans probably feel like we already have our Ja. Like, we feel like SGA is a really good player. So if we already have that most important piece, why can't we be like Memphis? And that's why I mean, I don't know, but just the fact that was his one example of luck, I think was interesting. What I would say in terms of the comparison, like, Memphis had 3 seasons in between making the playoffs. And that first season, when they won 22 wins, the only rookie of note on that team was Dylan Brooks.
Yeah.
Like, they really did start at the bottom. They land Triple J in the next one, but they didn't get anyone else. No other rookie of note in that draft. So then they win 33 games, and that's when they jump up and get Ja and Brandon Clark. And then it was another year until they got Desmond Bane. I think when you look at Memphis, because they're all so young, it's easy to think that all that happened in like a 2-year span.
Yeah.
But it actually took them several years of adding 1 or maybe 2 guys max per year that ended up being a part of that core.
Yeah.
So if you look at it from the Thunder's perspective, even if you want to take that first year with Shea and CP3, let's say that was like Shea's first year. Wait, and then the next year you get Giddey. Then you got Poku. Okay, Poku is our Dylan Brooks. Poku's our Dylan Brooks.
Yeah.
Not saying like they're the same player, but just like that was our main rookie of note out of that year.
Not the same player.
Definitely not the same player. But then you're really bad, and then you get Giddey.
Yeah.
Who is, again,
Triple
not
J.
Triple J, but in the same range. Triple J was a 4th pick. Giddey was a 6th pick.
Yeah.
So now we would be entering our Ja draft.
Yeah.
Which is when they got really lucky. They jumped from, I thought it was 9-2. He said 8-2. I forget what it was. They went up and got Morant, and they get Brandon Clark, who ends up being, a good role player for them as well. And so if you look at it that way, they are kind of on track, because this is the year where they're going to have 2 lottery picks. They're going to have extra lottery picks. Like, they easily could add 2 players in this draft who end up being part of the core going forward. And one of those could be a really like blue chip prospect.
Yeah. You add someone. You hope that you get lucky with your pick. I mean, and getting lucky to me is like even staying at 4. If you pick at 4 and 12, to me, you're in a really, really good spot. and then if you can possibly get like the 6th or 7th pick in next year's draft,
Yeah.
then to me, like, you have a very solid foundation. And then if number 12 works out in this draft, or 30 or 30, I mean, you just never know who's going to pop. And that's kind of what they're betting on, is that not only are we going to pick high in the draft and those guys will work out, but like, we need somebody else. Whether it could be Trey Mann, it could be JRE, it could be, we don't know who it's going to be. I mean, Desmond Bain didn't look like this in his rookie season.
Right.
People thought,
and they didn't get him till the 4th year of that rebuilding process, a year in which they only won 38 games last year. That was when they made the play-in. And why I think that's just like an interesting comparison. So if we think OKC's about to enter their 3rd draft of this cycle, and this was the draft when Memphis got Ja.
They would say 2nd draft.
They would. That's a disrespect to Poku. Disrespect.
It
is. What I think is interesting is the year after that, obviously, is when Memphis made it to the play-in. And that's kind of gets back to this philosophical difference about the value of making the play-in, which obviously Memphis used as a jumping off point to then win 56 games.
Yeah.
Versus OKC, who we think in that same situation would pull the ripcord and come back to get one more piece before maybe going the next year.
Well, just look at the way that the Memphis Grizzlies are covered in comparison to the Oklahoma City Thunder. Like the way that Memphis looks over at what OKC is doing, and it's not just the media, but everybody in Memphis looks at what OKC is doing in disgust.
Yeah.
Like, they think that it's horrific. They think that something needs, like, if anybody in the league is saying something needs to be done about Oklahoma City, it's Memphis. And part of it is that they've been scarred in the past by the OJ Mayos and Rudy Gays of the world that didn't get them where they needed to go. And it was the Marcus Gasol and it was Zach Randolph that eventually helped push them over. It wasn't their guys that they took in the top portion of the draft. Mike Conley was, but everybody else, no. So they look at what we're doing and it's like, yeah, it doesn't work. It doesn't work, But that was just like your experience. Like, we had a wonderful experience with this working very well here for over a decade. And we have the general manager that did it. And he would admit that he got extremely lucky that first go around. But the thing is, he's doubled down from where he was the first go around to kind of insulate himself with the number of picks that he has, to where they may not get, and they most likely will not get, a Durant, Westbrook, Harden team. However, they're going to add 3 or 4 rookies to this team next year in the top 34. And are they all going to be good? Probably not. But if 2 out of the 3 or 2 out of the 4 are good players, like, we already think that there's a lot of, at least decent players on this team, like 2 very good players of consequence on this team. I mean, if you add another one, then you add one more, and then you have these picks to make trades to add, like, you go shopping, like, what do we need? That's kind of the idea behind it.
Next thing I wanted to bring up is that Presti admitted that OKC does not have a winning culture. So if you're tweeting out there about culture and that OKC has this great winning culture, he said they did not. They have a culture that can win.
Yeah.
He made a distinction between a winning culture and a culture that can win, which I understood the point he was making.
Yeah.
But I got to say, though, winning culture sounds a lot better than culture that can win.
Yeah.
It needs a rebranding. We need to rebrand that other part.
I think that they could possibly grow into that. Like, he's also like made it clear that, like, no one around here is positive about what's going on. They're like hopeful about what's going on, but no one's positive. He's like, you have to be completely detached from what's going on to be positive about the goings on right now. Like, we're losing a ton of games. Like, no one's like actually positive.
Right. Yeah, no, but I liked his general point about the idea of a culture dependent on winning versus a culture that can create winning, that creates the environment where winning can happen.
Yeah.
It sounds kind of similar just saying it out loud, but I get the distinction there.
Sure.
And then just the last thing, what he said about Bays. The quote was, "I think that's happened with Bays a little bit." He's talking about how like he's first of all talking about Poku, and then led into this. Sometimes people will make harsh judgments 20 games of the season out of 82. Then by the end of the season, it's a much different story, and people are ignoring their previous bold takes. I just think, I mean, that's an admitting. Presti is admitting that he consumes some form of Thunder media. Andrew, is what I got from that, and
Hello, Sam.
that leaves open the possibility that Sam Presti last Friday was sitting in his office listening to you guys talk about the moon for 10 minutes. That opens up the possibility, the timeline where he had to listen to that.
That gives me great joy. That gives me great joy. That was one of my favorite conversations I've had in my whole life, honestly. Like, I'm very, very convinced about going to the moon. If anybody wants to talk about it, let me know.
I really enjoyed when Luke's went, all right, let's try to name him Buzz.
Buzz. And it was over.
Yeah, I mean, I just thought that was interesting. I mean, I don't have any. We've talked about Bays plenty. I feel like we didn't ignore our bold takes, but he might not be talking about us, so it doesn't matter.
You're talking about local radio. You're talking about.
Oh, I hope he doesn't have to listen to local radio. I feel like we're better than local radio.
Come on.
No offense. Was it you who was sending pictures? Were you at a remote for Al and Jim?
No. That was, I took those. I ripped those from the WWLS Twitter account.
Oh, okay. Andrew was sending some very funny pictures of Al Ishbak in like a full tracksuit with a straw hat, which I loved.
It was amazing. It was incredible.
Okay, so that wraps up thoughts on Presti's press conference. It was very interesting, and what I like about it, obviously, all credit to him for doing 2 hours of it. And as a fan who really loves this kind of stuff, what makes Presti's fun is because, as we did with his letter that he actually talked about after he traded Russ, like it's almost like a Da Vinci Code thing where you're like trying to go through it and get the secret message that he's sending to the fan base. And the fun part is, like, you can make it say whatever you want, but you know, that's the fun part.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those things that you can go back and listen to, and you're like, oh, I didn't really catch that. Or like you can go read it or listen to it again. And it's like, oh man, like I totally missed when he said that. Also, I think I said this on Monday, but like just the fact that Poku's playing in both summer leagues and that we get Giddey in the Utah Summer League, like that's just fun. Like it's going to be great fun for this summer. So great fun.
Real quick, I listened to our preseason pod.
Oh, let's take a break and then we'll go to the preseason.
Okay.
Connections. All right, we'll be right back. And we're back after that quick break. Let's take a look back, Al, at some preseason thoughts and predictions.
Yeah, so I listened to our preseason pod, which was right before the Jazz game. It was right after they had gotten blown out in a preseason game against the Milwaukee Bucks, and I had totally forgotten about that, and that social media was in an uproar already about how bad OKC was.
So bad. Yeah, that was really, really bad.
Okay, my bold takes. Memphis will be a top 6 seed, which in retrospect seems like a bell pepper take, but at the time you gave it a habanero rating.
It was spicy.
Next, which I feel great about that one. Next, Charlotte will have a bottom 5 record, which you did give a Carolina Reaper. Did not turn out as I wanted.
Yeah.
Oh, I still have major questions about Charlotte. First significant player to be traded, Yusuf Nurkic. Got that one wrong, although I did predict that Portland would get off to a bad start. So that's a little something.
It's a little close.
OKC predictions. Josh Giddey will lead OKC in double doubles. You gave that bell pepper. He did.
Yeah.
He had 16. Bays had 7.
Yeah, it's kind of easy.
Easy, but you know, I banked it. I banked the bell pepper.
Yeah. Little layup.
Okay. The Thunder will have one player with a PER greater than 15, which you gave Carolina Reaper. Okay, they ended up having 4, but the 4 were SGA, Muscala, Roby, and Jalen Horde.
Yeah.
Like I feel like I was on track.
Yeah, you're on track.
I was on track. The fact that no non-big man other than Shea had a PER over 15 is probably what I should have said, because bigs like get a PER of 15 automatically almost.
I was going to say those guys and the limited minutes that they had. It's like, okay, sure.
Yeah. And then my final one was Lou Dort will shoot a better percentage from 3 than Kenrich Williams, which you only gave a jalapeno, and it didn't even turn out to be true. Lou Dort finished at 33.2, and Kenrich finished at 33.9.
Wow.
I missed by 0.7%.
Wow. Ouch.
Then we gave out some Thunder superlatives.
Uh-huh.
Now, prospect with most potential in preseason, we both picked Giddey. Future Nick Collison, I went with JRE. You went with Kenrich, already on that bandwagon. Most overrated by the fan base, we both picked Poku,
Yeah.
which I think that makes sense.
I think we've all come down from the Poku cloud a little bit.
We have. Most underrated by the fan base, I went with Isaiah Roby. You went with Ty Jerome.
Yeah, I don't feel good about either one of those.
I know who would have been. I don't even know who.
Maybe like Trey at that point, I guess.
Yeah. Player that contender fan bases put into the trade machine the most, which in retrospect is obvious. Like, it was Kenrich. Like, he was all over the place. I went with SGA. You went with Dort, which I don't feel like there was a ton of. I mean, there was a little Dort conversation.
There's some Dort combos, yeah.
Moses Brown Award, which was the young player that will most split the fan base. We both went with Bays. I feel like nailed that.
Nailed it. Oh my gosh, there's still some Bays lovers out there, and God bless them.
Oh, well, one of them, Sam Presti.
Sure.
Young player most likely to be traded. I went with Ty Jerome. You went with Bays. Was there even were there any trades this year?
No.
Did I forget one? Okay. Justin Jackson Award, which was player most likely to hit a game-winning shot and not be on the team next season, which you'd probably go with Roby's 3 over Portland as like the closest to that.
Yeah, that's the closest approximation to that. Yeah.
And you mentioned him, and I immediately shot it down and said, no, it's going to be Gabriel Deck. He's going to knock us from the 3rd best odds to the 4th best odds. Like, we were on the right track. And then you chose Derek Favors.
Hey, Faves.
And then the one that I put on Twitter, the Svi Dunk Award, which is like, what is the skill that a player is going to randomly display this season? I went with Teo dunking, becoming a dunker. you know how many dunks he had this year? Off the top of your head, what would you guess?
1. I don't know.
Yes, he had 1.
Yeah.
You said not only will Roby become a shooter, you said he'll take 2 a game and hit 44%, which is basically exactly what he did. So.
I don't know how that happened. That is dumb luck. I don't even know where that came from. I couldn't have even told you what that prediction was, but it was.
Well, that was your most impressive prediction. And I posted Jay. I mean, Jay had a back-to-back of Portland not making the playoffs, like not even being a 10th seed, and then the Timberwolves being exactly the 7th seed. He did that in the span of 20 seconds. Very impressive.
Unbelievable. Way to go, Jay.
Way to go, Jay. Okay, so now we can move on to some questions.
All right, let's take another quick break, and then we will have some Twitter questions. And we're back from that quick break. We got 47 questions out to get through.
All right.
So, buckle up. Here we go.
Buckle up.
First question is from Simon Eat Dog.
Oh, no.
Or Simon at Dog. I don't know which one. In Sam's exit interview, he mentioned their interest in Aaron Wiggins after his mature interview. What are your thoughts on the heavy emphasis on personality versus skill in terms of draft prospects? Seems like the Thunder values 1, culture, fit, then basketball ability.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was a slightly weird quote that he was like, how old is this guy, 21 or 51?
Yeah.
I was like, well, I hope he's not 51. What if you drafted a 51-year-old? That'd be terrible.
he's walking in on some kind of like he's taking all his vitamins. Now, I don't know. So one, like, you're picking so late in the draft.
I know that. I think that's the most important point.
You're looking for anything. Like, does anything pique my interest about any of these guys? I mean, it doesn't. That one, I don't know. They do look for culture fit. There's no doubt about it that they looked for like the right kind of guys. One, I don't think you want to hit on a guy that's going to want to leave here. You know, I think that they have they want to stay away from guys like that. And two, like they are trying to build like a hopeful environment like within the team and a competitive environment. And like you need just like good people to help do that to propel it. So I think that's part of it. And like the thing about Aaron Wiggins, like Aaron Wiggins is pretty good too, and was pretty good at Maryland. So it's not crazy. And I don't think that I don't think it's like number one, like you have to be this. And then if you have basketball skill, great, you know. Like,
yeah. Also, like the stories that come out from the draft process are usually more along these lines. Like the one I think about off the top of my head is the Warriors taking James Wiseman. And like the only story that really comes out from that is how I think it was the owner, like it was either Lacob or Bob Myers talked about how he wore a suit to the dinner conversation and how that was such a big deal. And of course, Warriors fans have taken that to mean that's the only reason they drafted James Wiseman, which probably isn't the case, but that's just the story that came out.
mm-hmm.
And I feel like the same way here. Like we're talking about, he was the 55th pick or whatever. Like, is it that interesting to say like, oh yeah, he was really good in workouts? Like he's, it's just much more interesting to give like a human personal story when talking about the draft process.
Yeah.
Than saying like, oh, he was just really great in workouts. So like that's going to stick in your mind more. So I don't look at that one story as like this is our entire draft philosophy.
Yeah. Well, and to Sam's credit, like he is incredibly mature and like gives great answers. He's a very smart guy. Like he really is. And like you look at the rest of the draft too. It's like, did they miss on anybody? Like, are you sick to your stomach that didn't take Jericho Sims or, I mean, Yorgos, who we have on our team now, was the 60th pick in the draft. It's
was he really?
You're at 55.
Yeah.
Like you're looking for anything at that point, you know. Luka Garza's gone, guys. You got to go find somebody else.
Garza missed our shot. We didn't even have a chance to take him.
All right, we're gonna have to move at a swifter pace than this. At Chud OKC, this is Elman's brother. How does the bonus money work out for cut players, 10-day guys, and 2-way guys? It depends on I think how long you've been with the team. So guys that were with the team for a long time, are going to get a cut. It's all decided by the Players Association. So like they get to decide how that's distributed with those particular guys. I don't know if 10-day guys that were only here for 10 days, if they get any of it, I don't know. Or like the hardship exception guys, I'm not sure. But the guys that were here, like I bet you like Gabby Deck's going to get a check. Like he's going to get some kind of cut, just like this random check mailed to his house. Like that's going to happen. So, but it's all decided by the Players Association. So it's a little murky on like how much they get, but those guys will get something. At Cade Cole, but if we ended up at 6 and 12, who are your picks here? So for me, it's still pretty early on. Like I don't have like definitively who I would pick, but we can talk about the guys who we'd like. Like AJ Griffin's like an easy one for me. Like he checks a lot of boxes. Like he's very young. He's got a ton of upside. Shooter on the wing. Like they need those kind of players. So like he's an easy one. And then at 12, like if Dyson Daniels is still there, I like him. I like Jeremy Sohan. I like Tari Eason. I like Jalen Duren if he falls that far. Like there's a lot of guys I like in that range.
Yeah, I think at 6, like you just want to take. I want the guy with high upside.
Yeah.
And there's going to be some options there. Like we still don't know what's going on with Shaedon Sharp, but
gosh, have you been following that at all on Twitter?
Just a little bit.
The UK people are going nuts. Like they're losing their minds right now. It is just pandemonium. It's a lot. I compared it last night to like how the Thunder fans were before Paul George declared.
Yeah,
not declared, before he decided what he was going to do in free agency. It feels like that to them, where they're looking for they're watching these clips like he's wearing blue shoes, like he's going to stay. You know, people are losing it right now.
I'm just looking at the Tankathon mock draft which of course this has OKC at 4, but
Yeah.
they have Keegan Murray going to the Pacers, and man, does that feel perfect.
That is so Pacers.
Good Lord. I hadn't even, that thought hadn't crossed my mind yet, but now I see it, and it's just like, oh yeah, Keegan Murray. Plays
Keegan
for
Murray and
Iowa.
Miles Turner is like the most Pacers lineup ever, and it's actually like pretty great for them. You had those two Halliburton, who are like that's great. Like that's a ton of shooting for them. Like that fits like a glove.
Yeah. I like that. I like that a lot. In terms of pick 12, I don't really have a strong opinion as of right now. I still, if Duren falls to 12, like I still don't feel like we have a good sense after the top, like, I don't know if you want to go down to 7, if we think Sharp is going to be in it, but like outside of the top 6 or 7, it doesn't seem like it's very clear, like what the rankings are. There's going to be some player in that next group who is going to be available at 12 that people will be surprised that they are there.
Yeah.
And so I'm interested to see who that ends up being. Like right now, Tankathon's mock draft has Jalen Duren in that spot. And how I feel right now, that does feel like a drop for Jalen Duren.
I think it feels very good. If like you ended up with AJ Griffin and Jalen Duren, you're like, okay. That at least
I would feel pretty good about that.
Yeah. Even if, you'd obviously feel way better if they were getting Ivy or Paulo or but
the other guy I'll throw in there is Patrick Baldwin Jr., who still hasn't announced, and he is like, if you want to look at stats or even film, like there's some toxic.
It's gross. It's gross. You'd rather
it's bad
30. Yeah,
but I'm betting on the fact that this guy was like a top 5 recruit, was offered by Duke, which does not happen to everyone.
Yeah.
And looking at what happened with Zaire Williams last year.
Yeah.
And obviously the COVID thing wasn't as big this year as it was the previous year when Zaire went through it.
Yeah.
But there are those additional factors, like the fact that he stayed and played with his dad, who is now fired from that university.
Yeah.
They didn't have a just like decent team to put around him.
Yeah.
I would rather take a risk on a guy like that at 12, which would feel very like taking Zaire Williams at 10 last year for Memphis.
Yeah, it would. There's also like the BJ Boston comp where maybe he's available at 34.
Yeah. So that's obviously that's like a shot in the dark, and it may seem outlandish to some people. Like Tankathon has him going at 25. I've seen other places where he's not going until like the second, but that seems he hasn't declared yet. And I bet if he declares, it'll be because someone promised him in that like mid lottery or late lottery range.
Yeah. Also, shout out to Usman Jang, who is anywhere from a lottery pick to the second round, depending on who is ranking him. For whatever reason, ESPN is boosting his draft stock with their assessment of him. But he's at least a very interesting player. He's had like a nice like end of his season, but before that, a horrific year where he did not play well at all, but his highlights look nice. So that one you have to, it's like a little bit like T Ferg, where it was like, all right, the year wasn't good, but we like what we see athletically and, his skill wise, like we like it. So yeah. All right. Next question comes from Yaduro Ridovic. He says, rank these 4: Josh Giddey, Miles Bridges, Mikal Bridges, Tyrese Halliburton.
Those are such different players.
Yeah, it's a tough one because their skill sets are all very, very different.
Yeah.
As far as like, if you're like ranking like the future of like what they can be, I think you probably put like Josh, Halliburton, Miles, Mikal. But if you're ranking like today, like what they are today, it's like Mikal, Miles, Tyrese, Josh,
Yeah. Yeah. The only one, I would probably Giddey or Halliburton. I honestly don't have a strong opinion. Obviously I like Giddey more because I've watched him, but I'm open to the idea that there are people that think Halliburton is better than Giddey, and I'm not going to be offended by that.
Yeah.
And then I would probably go Mikal over Miles long term. But Mikal, again, is one of those guys who's like in a system where he's slowly been growing his offensive role. And if he was on another team, maybe that process would be sped up a little bit and we'd feel differently about him. Obviously, you would love to have someone like Mikal Bridges on your team, especially as the Thunder. What I would give for someone who could shoot and defend, do both.
That'd be great. That would be great.
How nice would that be?
That's where I like the AJ Griffin pick. He could be Mikal Bridges-esque at the NBA level.
Yeah.
And hopefully a better shooter and a higher volume shooter, but we'll see. Chadamus wants to know, Presti mentioned players excelling or getting left behind. Who are players that you see excelling, and who are those you see that will get left behind?
Kirk Cameron.
Kirk Cameron.
Yeah, Kirk Cameron.
I mean, I see Teo getting left behind at some point.
Yeah, that feels like the easiest one, just because it still feels like he has so much ground to make up. If he was on a team where he was like, it was a good team that just took him with like their late first, and he's really the only young player on their team, you'd feel a lot better about his future with that team. Whereas with the Thunder, it just feels like with a new crop of guys coming in, and the fact that this team already has a ton of guards that you want to see play with SGA, Giddey, Trey, and Dort, it's just hard to figure out the path for Teo on this particular team. So that's an easy one.
I mean, so if the Thunder draft, let's say they get Jabari Smith and they get Tari Eason or something, where you get like these two forwards, it's the interesting like excelling or left behind battle to me then is it Shea or not Shea? I'm sorry, Baisley. Is it Shea? Does Shea get left behind? No, is it Baisley or JRE?
Yeah,
because eventually, like, there's not going to be enough spots at the forward spot for those guys, and
that's where Baze's upcoming contract comes into play. Like, you have to make a decision on Baze a lot quicker than you have to make on JRE. So you have to feel really good about Baze by the end of next year.
Like, they might get.
They might.
If he can hit a corner three, like, that's what he's missing. That's the swing skill for him, and it's not crazy that he develops that next year and he's back to where he was in year one. And if he's that guy who can be a great shot blocker, he doesn't foul a lot, he can defend multiple positions, I think you can see a world where it's like, I guess we have to choose Baisley and we've got to let Jeremiah go, or we got to find a trade for Jeremiah. I would bet on it going the other way because of the contract situation and because I'm not a huge believer in Baisley's corner three. And like personality wise, I think not that Baisley like doesn't fit, but like Jeremiah's fit is like way more seamless to me. Like, I think that he's in a lot of ways a lot easier fit. But that to me would be one that could be a battle, when it comes down to it between those two. Because I don't think if you've got like your starting forward, like who's going to win the backup position, I think is very, very interesting. Like if you have both of those guys going full bore. I could see Aaron Wiggins getting left behind.
See, I could almost see him as a guy who could excel just because like he already is older and has the maturity, but he has the bonus of being on this super cheap deal.
Yeah.
So he has the long runway if the team wants it. And he already has like the personality and the maturity that's going to give him a leg up on some of the younger guys. So I could see his path going forward being easier than someone like Baze, who you're going to have to make a decision on like very soon.
He's got to hit shots though.
Yeah, for sure.
Like he's got to hit his three.
I mean, everyone on this team has to hit shots.
Yeah. Beat Krejci is another one.
He hit shots.
He's got to hit shots. He did at the end of the last season. He ended up at 32.7% from three. Roby is another one. Like, even though he did hit 44% from three, I don't think that anybody's out here saying like he's a keeper. Lindy Waters, like obviously like all these end of the roster guys are going to have to like make a jump this summer. Like this summer is not only important for Josh and Trey and those guys that are like the obvious ones, but like it's a giant summer for like Lindy Waters and like, can he make it as an NBA guy?
Yeah.
He's at almost 6 threes at 36%. That's good. That's got to be 6 threes on 39%, if he wants to make it. And he's got the size, he's got He's got the shot. Like, can he do that? And then Poku too. Like, Poku's very, very young, but this is his first season to shoot over 40%. He's gotta do better than that. So I think the list is long, actually, of guys that could get left behind. Just because if you bring in 4 rookies and then you bring in 3 the next year, that's 7 slots. Like, they don't have close to that right now, 7 slots. So who's going to go? Like, somebody's going to have to go. Let's see. At Patrick Sievert wants to know, please define generational talent as you use it. We clearly have very different definitions.
I think there's 2 types. There's like the generational talent in terms of a draft prospect, like Anthony Davis, the guys where like, in January that like this guy is going to be the number 1 pick. There's zero question about it. Everyone knows it.
Mm-hmm.
So like Anthony Davis, LeBron, obviously. I'd put Zion in there, even though he wasn't that coming into his college season. By like January, everyone knew was Zion. So there's like that type of generational talent. And then there's a generational talent that kind of reveals itself in their first couple years.
Mm-hmm.
Like Russ, would fall into that, or Harden would fall into that.
Yeah.
Where they weren't thought that way going into the draft process, but within like 4 to 5 years, you're like, this guy is on another level from what we thought.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Those are like the 2 type when I think of generational talent. And obviously, like going into this draft, there isn't like the generational talent in terms of the draft prospect.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that someone from this draft couldn't become a generational talent.
Yeah. I mean, it would take an outlier, but like Giannis was a generational talent in a draft that people thought was bad. And by the way, like Sam said in his press conference that he likes this draft. That he thinks this draft is pretty good.
That's what you say when you have 4 top 34 picks and you're trying to move up. Obviously.
I guess. I mean, you could posture it either way.
But why would you? What's the benefit of you saying that it's good for yourself? Like, why would you tell the truth about what you actually thought about the draft? You're always going to say it's good. Why would you say it's bad? Or why would you say it's meh?
Because
they have 4 picks. They have a ton of draft. They have more draft capital in this draft than any other team. Of course, he's going to say it's a
this
good
draft is okay. I mean, I guess you could posture it that you don't think the draft is that great. So, like, you think like, the 9th pick is usually it's not worth that much, and you're like the difference between 9 and 12 is not that much, but you might think that it is. And then you're like, yeah, don't worry about it. Whoever's at 9, Sacramento, don't sweat it. You're calling me anyways to ask what I think about the trade. So let's did you see that?
No.
There was an article that said that the owner of the Sacramento Kings calls Sam Presti before he makes any sort of deal to ask him what he thinks about it.
Nuh-uh.
Yes.
Where was that?
I can't remember who released it, but I read it. And they said that he calls other general managers to ask.
Monty McNair does?
Not Monty, the owner.
Vivek?
Vivek, yeah. Vivek will call and ask other GM what they think about certain trades.
That's tight.
And
I like that.
They said specifically he will call Sam. So
that might be the reason why the Kings haven't been good, if Sam has been sabotaging them for a decade.
Hey, yeah. Do I think that you should bring in Rajon Rondo and Marco Bellinelli? Yes. Yes. Go get them. Go get him, Vivek. Yeah, that's funny. Panicked Waddle wants to know, which scenario would you choose? The Thunder are guaranteed to get the 2nd pick, but Houston gets the 1st pick, or number 2, no guarantees, just let the lottery play out.
I mean, give me the 2nd pick. I don't. You can't worry about Houston. And in fact, if you want that Houston pick to be good, you want them to get better sooner, because if they're bad again next year, which I actually think is going to be the case, and they add another top 5 pick, and so now they have Green, let's say they get Chet, and then they add another top 5 pick in next year's draft.
Yeah.
Like, their talent base is going to be absolutely loaded in terms of blue chip prospects.
Yeah.
So I would rather them get a better player this year, start to work their way toward mediocrity, maybe end up at the 8 to 12 range next year.
Yeah.
And then you feel better about that pick the following year. So
Yeah. Let's see. Do you think that 12 and 30, this is from Austin Willisher. Do you think Williger, do you think that 12 and 30 would be enough to get into the top 10? If so, how high would you? No, it's not. That 30th pick is not worth a whole lot. It's not enough to push you that much higher, in my opinion.
Yeah, although I did want to bring up, and a Down to Dunk listener had sent this to me, and it's something I had been thinking about with the Pelicans win. Obviously, the team that got screwed there was Portland.
Yeah.
And Portland had this idea that they were going to trade that Pelicans pick for Jeremy Grant. And listening to people who know things, it almost seemed like it was a done deal for this summer. So if you're the Blazers, and let's say you end up not jumping up and you end up at like 7 or 8, right now they have the 6th best odds. It seems very reasonable for the Thunder to be like, what if we traded you the 12th pick and 1 or 2 other first-round picks so that you can make some of these deals that you want to?
Yeah.
Or what if Portland jumps up to like 3 and OKC's at 6 and 12? Would they potentially do that? Because in that scenario, now Portland gets to like go back in the time machine. They end up where they should have ended up based on their odds, and they get the 12th pick so that they can make the Jeremy Grant trade. I have no idea if Portland would be open to something like that. Personally, I would just take whoever you like at number 3. But it would allow them to like reverse time and get those 2 lottery picks back. And if you're the Thunder and you could jump into the top 3 and you like one of those 3 big guys, like that would be very exciting.
Yeah, I think there are definitely possibilities within this draft, because I do think that it's like very open-ended. Like I'll bet you that the 15 teams or 14 teams in the lottery, I think there'll be a wild variation on who's the best player.
Yeah, for sure.
I think some teams will have Ivy as number 1. I think some teams will have Chet number 1. Some teams will have. I think it's just a really interesting draft that I think that there could be and probably will be some movement. At Mendenhall 10, assuming SGA and Giddey are the only players with guaranteed spots in Presti's plan, Dort's extension hasn't even been discussed yet, according to Presti. What must a rookie or a roster player show in order to get in the plan?
I mean, what separates SGA and Giddey from all of these other guys is like how they came into the league. Like Giddey was drafted as the 6th player in a draft. Shea was drafted, I think, at 11.
Yeah.
Like it's just a huge gulf between them, like their value as just a prospect versus these other guys. So that's what gives them the leg up. So obviously, whoever they draft at 6 and 12 is going to have that similar type of cachet as SGA and Giddey. And I think as a team, you're committed to those guys for way longer, and you're committed at more money versus someone taken at 30 or especially in the 2nd round. So for someone coming in, I mean, it's finding what role makes sense around Shea and Giddey. Because if those guys really are locked in as the cornerstone pieces of this franchise, that means that the player who's coming in has to figure out their role with those guys in some way.
Yeah. Or you're a top level talent, and you have to figure out how those 3 will work together. I mean, at this point, they're looking for a guy. Like, can they be a top 20 player in the league? Like that's how you for sure get yourself cemented as a part of this plan. Because I think the rest of the roster is pretty fluid from here. Like I wouldn't lock in anybody else just because they're going to be looking for specific needs with those 2 guys. And like, to me, the specific need that is not on the roster today is shooting. Like they need like a knockdown, high volume shooter on the wing. And if you don't have that with those 2, I'm not sure how like actually competitive you can be. To me, that's like the number 1 thing that they're lacking, and also like a big that's versatile and that can do a lot of things. I think that's what they're looking for. So those are the things that they need, and they don't have either one of those things on the roster right now. They have a lot of development pieces around these guys, but we don't know who's going to work out. Hopefully it's just Trey. It'd be great if Trey was the guy that shot 7 threes and was a 40% 3-point shooter next to those guys. It doesn't have to be a big wing. Ideally, it's a big wing, but
yeah,
if it's another guard, I think that's fine too.
I think people will be surprised how differently they think of this team after this draft, because when you bring in 2 guys who are going to be taken at 6 and 12, you are going to latch onto those guys in the way that we've latched on to Giddey and Shea, to the point where all of a sudden the way you feel about the guys who are 8 through 14 is going to change drastically. All of a sudden, all those players are going to seem much more, I don't know what you expendable. Yes, that's what word I was looking for.
Yeah.
Than they seem right now. I mean, all the you're going to have a mind shift after this draft when we start looking at the roster. And I think outside of those 4, Shea, Giddey, 6 and 12, I would Trey is that next guy for me who feels like he's kind of right there.
Mm-hmm.
And then beyond that, at that point, I don't know how much I'm really worried about it, because at that point I'm going to feel we have 5 guys that I really like.
Yeah. Everything is going to shift after you see what this team is in Summer League in Utah and in Vegas. Our conversations are going to be drastically different.
Yeah,
they're going to be drastically different. Let's see. A lot of who do you like at this spot? Who do you like at that spot?
Who do you like?
At Ron Lennon says, any possibility OKC trades to get an above average center this offseason? No. They'll select someone in the draft if they like them at center, and if not, they'll play with the guys they have. They're not going to get a free agent or make a trade this summer that is of consequence. That's not going to happen. They're going to if they're going to make their roster better, it's going to be through the draft or through internal development, period. The end. We don't need to go on Lowry Markkinen and watch again. If people are doing that and they're oh, there's a restricted free agent, we've got this much money to spend. I really hope that OKC signs them. Oh, Bleacher Report has that the Thunder are interested. Oh my gosh, we got to. I hope that something happens. I'm waking up every morning and checking Lowry Markkinen tweets. Stop. Don't.
It's gonna be Mitchell Robinson, because there was already a report that OKC was interested, which I don't believe in.
Yeah, don't buy into the Mitchell Robinson crap that. Who I don't care who reports it. That's not going to happen. The end of the story. That won't happen. It will not. Not going to.
And especially for that type of a player. Now, if the DeAndre Ayton thing blows up, I'll understand why people want to talk about that.
Yeah,
but that's a much different conversation from let's just get an above average center. Yes. Which maybe you think Mitchell Robinson falls in that or not, because then it's well, what's the point if you're not trading for a guy who has the potential to be an all-star, which Mitchell Robinson does not? No. What's the point? You have all these picks, and now you're just going to give a huge contract to a guy who's above average, and you're going to have to play him 30 minutes a night.
No way.
Which wipes out all this playing time for all these picks that you have coming in. If they're going to make a trade, it has to be for a guy.
If you got the second pick and DeAndre Ayton's agent came to you and said, hey, listen, we love what you're building here. Ayton loves Giddey and Shea and thinks that he can progress his career into his 30s, and that Chris Paul's almost done, and he's wanting to get ahead of the curve and get out.
Wow.
We know that the Suns won't match a max. Will you guys max out Ayton? The answer is 100% yes. You would do that. But newsflash, that's not happening. That's not going to happen. But if that situation just plopped in the Thunder's lap and you could have DeAndre Ayton for free, and you don't have to give up anything, and you get to keep all your assets, you get to keep everything, and a team of Ayton, Jabari, Giddey, Trey, Dort, SGA, that's okay. That's a talent base. That's a talent base enough to say, yes, let's go.
And also, it wouldn't happen for nothing because he's still a restricted free agent. So if it's going to happen, it'll be as a sign and trade, and you're going to have to give up a lot.
If they don't match. Like they could not. I mean, they could.
Oh,
The Thunder could sign the off. They could sign. He could sign an offer sheet with the Thunder, and then
that would be truly wild.
yeah, and they not match because they don't want to sign a max contract. Like there's
Yeah,
like,
that
that's-
would be dumb. But if it ever came to a sign and trade, though, it would be more. It would cost more than like the Porzingis deal, which that was two
no doubt.
future firsts and a young player in Dennis Smith Jr.
Yeah, there's no doubt. But yes, like the answer, like if something weird and wild popped up, like that's a part of like why Sam is saying, listen, I'm not watching the clock. I'm not putting a date on this. And it's not only for kicking the can down the road, which I think is really what that means, but it's like we're open to just some great player saying we will love what you're building here. I want to come play for you. Like, yes, but I don't think they're under the impression that something like that's going to happen. Like it's not going to happen. But if that did happen, and let's say just something weird happened and DeAndre Ayton loved eating at the Mule or something here in Oklahoma City, then it's like, all right, you get to live here, and you can live in downtown Edmond and eat at the Mule all you want, man. Go for it. It's not going to happen though. But yeah, the answer is yes. If that were to happen like that, that would be great. That would be wonderful. Ayton would be awesome with those guys. He'd be incredible. But do not get your hopes up on that. Okay, we'll stop there. Long pod.
Oh, one more.
One more. Okay.
Speaking of endorsement deals, how do companies have not they lined up for Anthony Edwards yet? I'm watching Zach LaVine on that Mountain Dew commercial, where he's just like just dead, just reading off the lines. I know Anthony Edwards could do better than that.
Yeah.
He's
the best.
He should have multiple endorsement deals by now.
He's the best. Ryan Schwartzman wants to know top 5 board game recommendations when your favorite game is Pandemic.
So I've never played Pandemic, but I believe it's a cooperative game. So you're not, directly going against other people. You're working together. You're working together, Andrew.
Okay.
So in that case, if I'm just basing on cooperative games, I like Spirit Island.
Mm-hmm.
Spirit Island, it throws the genre, it turns it on its head, Andrew. Instead of playing the colonizers, as you typically do in a lot of video games, you're playing the spirits of an island who are defending against the invasion, and you're doing that cooperatively. And the other game, I really like Aeon's End. Now, both of those games are pretty heavy. Aeon's End is also a co-op game that's very fun. These are much heavier games than Pandemic, but I really like them. You might like them, but I don't know a lot about Pandemic beyond that, other than it's a co-op game.
Okay. Well, there you go. And Alex _Bullerjack wants to know, what's your favorite breakfast meat?
Breakfast meat. So like bacon, sausage. What's another? Canadian bacon would, I guess, be an option.
What's the Spanish meat? The Mexican?
Chorizo.
Chorizo, yeah. Chorizo's good.
If you pick sausage, you got to say in what form. Do you like it as link or patty?
Yeah, I wouldn't pick sausage. Probably like a really good thick cut bacon. It's really tough to beat. Steak. Hoopstock69 says steak.
Yeah.
Steak. Yeah.
I think I'll go sausage patty. I like things that you can put on a sandwich, and so the other option would be bacon. But I'll go sausage patty.
Yeah, I'll say just a nice thick cut bacon. It's tough to beat. Okay. Thanks so much for listening to our show. We appreciate it. We'll be back on Friday with another episode of, maybe we're talking about the moon again on Friday. Who knows? It's the off season, but more draft content coming to you guys here in the coming weeks. We have the draft lottery less than a month away now, Al. We will know where the Thunder are picking. And I feel just nervous even saying those words. Thanks so much. We'll talk to you guys again on Friday.